In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to build and frost a square cake with no special tools. You'll need a turntable for this, and a cake board on a non-slip mat. Place a dollop of buttercream in the middle of the cake board and then press your first layer of cake down onto it to secure it. Spread your filling onto this first layer, going right up to the edges of the cake, and then alternate layers of cake with your filling to build your cake. For each layer, line it up so that it's sitting directly on top of the previous layer, and this is the first step to getting straight sides on your cake. If your layers aren't perfectly level, and I haven't leveled these ones, rotate your layers so that if the previous layer is sloping down towards one corner, arrange the next layer on top so that the thickest corner of that layer is on top of the lower one of the previous layer. I'm using 6 layers of my perfect chocolate cake for this, which I've made with black cocoa powder to make these beautiful black layers. I'm filling the cake with my 4-minute buttercream, and the recipes for the cake and the buttercream are in the description below this video. Put the cake in the freezer for about 30 minutes before frosting it to chill the layers so that they stay firm while you frost them, and so that they're less crumbly. Spread buttercream over the top of the cake, and it doesn't have to be smooth and neat because this is just a crumb coat. Then spread buttercream over each side of the cake. Use back and forth motions, gliding your spatula and then swiping it off when you need to get more buttercream, instead of lifting the spatula straight off the cake, because that might pull away the buttercream with it, and maybe cake crumbs or chunks as well. With your offset spatula, spread the buttercream all the way down to the cake board and all the way up above the top edge of the cake, and also go over the edges of the sides, so that you have overhanging frosting to make a sharp edge with later. If you're enjoying this tutorial, please click the thumbs up button to like it, and subscribe to my channel for new cake decorating tutorials every week. Use a frosting smoother to smooth the frosting. This is just a crumb coat, which we're going to cover with a final coat of frosting later, and I'll go into much more detail on how to smooth the frosting when we get to that final coat, because the crumb coat doesn't need to be very smooth. Touch up any air pockets or indents in the frosting with more buttercream, and smooth again. Even though this layer of frosting doesn't need to be very smooth, you do want it to give the cake the right shape, as a foundation for the final coat to sit on top of. It's very important that the crumb coat completely covers the cake, to trap in any crumbs that might come off the cake, so that they don't get into your final coat of frosting. Tidy up the top edge of the frosting with an offset spatula or your frosting smoother, pulling the overhanging frosting in towards the middle of the cake. You can build up the top corners of the cake if they're drooping down by spreading on more buttercream and then smoothing again. Then, when you're happy with the shape, put the cake back in the freezer for 15 minutes, or in the fridge for 30 minutes, to set the crumb coat. Tint your buttercream for the frosting, and I've made this with mostly pink gel and a tiny amount of red and royal blue. When your cake has chilled, take it out of the fridge or freezer and spread buttercream over the top, going right up over the edges, and to smooth it out, I like to spin the cake and press gently down with my offset spatula, and then swipe off to take any excess buttercream off the top of the cake. Spread buttercream over the sides of the cake, using that same back and forth gliding motion to spread the buttercream, and make sure the buttercream goes all the way down to the bottom of the cake and all the way up over the top edge, and also over the side edges of the cake. Because you've chilled and set the crumb coat, you won't blend the final coat of frosting with the crumb coat, so any cake crumbs will stay trapped in the crumb coat, and if you've used a different colour for the crumb coat, it won't mix into the colour of this final coat of frosting. I've used a white crumb coat for this cake because I crumb coat cakes in batches, sometimes before I've decided what colour I'm going to frost the cake, so I use white to be safe, since I know that the colour going on top is going to be the same, white, or a darker colour. If you crumb coat a cake with a darker colour than the final coat, you have to make the final coat of frosting very, very thick to cover up the darker colour underneath. If you want to perfect the foundation of your cakes, I have a very detailed online course called The Basics of Cake on my online cake school, and I teach how to mix, bake, and assemble cakes, as well as how to make different fillings and frostings, how to frost a square and round cake, a few different ways to decorate it, how to store it, transport it, and serve it. For more information, click the link in the top of the screen to go to my online cake school, and I've put the link in the description below this video as well. As you're spreading on the buttercream, aim for an even thickness of buttercream all over the cake, but don't worry too much about it because we'll fix any air pockets later. The secret to sharp edges on square cakes, around the sides and at the top, is to spread the frosting right over the edge so that it sticks out of the sides, or sticks up at the top. When you've covered the cake with buttercream, switch to a frosting smoother and start beyond the edge of the cake, on the overhanging frosting, and pull the frosting smoother slowly towards you while applying a little bit of pressure against the cake to smooth it, but you're mostly pulling it towards you. Go all the way around the cake once, smoothing every side, and this will expose any air pockets, where the frosting isn't as thick as on the rest of the cake. Use your offset spatula to fill in these air pockets by spreading on some more buttercream and then scrape over them with your frosting smoother. Scrape any buttercream off your frosting smoother after each time you use it, putting the buttercream back into your bowl of frosting and then wiping the edge of the frosting smoother clean on a towel or paper towel so that it doesn't drag dregs of buttercream back onto your cake. As you smooth the edges now, scraping a few times on each side, there might still be air pockets, but the sides should be getting more even with this second round of using your frosting smoother. Keep touching up any air pockets or indents by spreading on more buttercream to fill them. As you scrape, you should start your scraping motion beyond the edge of the cake, so that your blade cuts into the buttercream at the edge and leaves a sharp edge there. I like to use an acrylic frosting smoother for this because I can see what I'm doing through the scraper, and it's firm and heavy, whereas my plastic smoother is a bit flimsy, so it's fine for the crumb coat, but not ideal for the final coat, which I want to be really smooth. Keep scraping with your frosting smoother, going around the cake, side after side after side, doing touch-ups, and then scraping again until you're happy with how smooth the sides are. We're not completely finished with the sides yet, but they should be as smooth as you want them to be. Now move on to the top edge of the cake, using an offset spatula or a frosting smoother to scrape from beyond the outer edge of the cake towards the middle, pulling the overhanging frosting with it and swiping it off the cake and scraping the buttercream off into your bowl. Clean your frosting smoother or offset spatula after each time you use it, otherwise you'll pull buttercream onto the cake and mess up your sharp edges. As you tidy up the top edge, you'll be applying a bit of pressure downwards, and that will create a little bulge at the top of the sides of your cake, which you can get rid of easily with your frosting smoother by scraping around the sides again. By alternating between smoothing the top and the sides, you're creating nice sharp edges on the cake. I have some pesky air pockets, so I'm filling those in, and it's never too late to do this, so if you notice them at any point, these indents that just won't be smoothed by your frosting smoother, spread on some more buttercream and then smooth again. You can experiment with your frosting smoother, going upwards instead of sideways, but I always finish each side of the cake by scraping sideways to make sure it's smooth all the way across. When you touch up air pockets and then smooth the side, you might push buttercream up over the top edge of the cake, so you'll have to tidy up that top edge again. I'm leaving this one edge uneven so I can show you the knife technique next. For this technique, you need to chill the cake to set the frosting, and it needs to be really firm, so I'd put it in the fridge for about an hour, and then use a sharp knife dipped in hot water and dried off on a towel or paper towel to trim the uneven edge, cutting off all of the excess buttercream to leave a nice sharp edge behind. I don't use this technique because I find the frosting smoother method more effective, and also because the hot knife against the cold buttercream usually changes the colour of the buttercream, making it a slightly different shade to the buttercream on the rest of the cake. Okay, drooping corners and air pockets on the edges. To fix these, chill your cake for about an hour in the fridge to set the frosting. If you have any air pockets right on the edges of the cake, you can fill them in now that the frosting is hard, and this way, as you're filling in the air pocket, you're not messing up your sharp edges. They'll hold their shape, and after you spread the buttercream on to fill in the hole and then smooth over it, you're scraping off the excess buttercream that you've just spread on, but you're not changing the sharp edge because that frosting has already set, so it's staying firm. You can scrape upwards and sideways to get all of the excess buttercream off the cake. To fix drooping corners, spread on some more buttercream onto the corner, the top and the sides of the corner, and then use your frosting smoother to smooth the sides again to make a sharp point, and with this extra buttercream, you'll raise the top of the corner. You'll usually have to do this for all of your corners, because the weight of the buttercream pulls down on the corners of the cake and lowers them, but once the frosting has been chilled and it's set, you can put more buttercream on top of the corner, and that set frosting will hold its shape and the fresh frosting won't push it down. It will sit on top of that set frosting to make the corner higher. And there's my frosted square cake. You can wipe the smudges of buttercream off the cake board with a paper towel wrapped around your finger, and it's best to do this after you've chilled the cake to set the frosting, so that you don't damage the frosting when you go right up to the edge of the cake with your paper towel. For lots of fun, unique cake designs, check out my online cake school. I've put that link in the top of the screen and in the video description below. I hope you found this tutorial useful. Please click the thumbs up button to like it, and subscribe to my channel for a new cake decorating tutorial every week.